Hello, hello, and welcome to the show. I'm Nadia Giordana, and our guest today is debut author Andrew Pruett. His book, Shaped by Water, is a brand new release from Fox Point Publishing, and I promise you that this book is of equal interest to women as it is to men. Let's go meet Andrew and learn more about it. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
I wanted to first off ask you, when and how did your overall interest in writing begin?
Well, I didn't have a very strong interest in it, but I've got a lot of great stories, and you just heard one. The people around me have been telling me for years that I needed to write them down, write a book. I work in a hospital, and I had written some of these stories down to share with sick patients, or people who had a need to kind of be uplifted a little bit, and I would share them, and they would say, "Oh, you've got to put this in a book. I would read a book if you wrote one." And it takes a lot of effort to write a book. It is a huge amount of work, and I never seemed to have enough time to do anything. Then we were pounded by the pandemic, and I kind of took a dive. My mental health went down. I worked with a lot of COVID patients. I saw people come in a little sick and then die, and I was in this bad place. And then my wife and my mother both said, there's a writing contest at the library. You should enter it. It's about water. I love water, and I spend my life around water, and I've spent my life around water, and I still do tons of stuff. So it was local history about water, personal responsibilities with water, and personal experiences with water. So I fit the bill, and I thought, I'm not a writer. I will never win this contest, but it's a good framework for me to write something for my son and my nephew, both of whom I love very much. And I thought this is something that they could get a little, family history from, something they can remember me by, and I will be able to make a little, Christmas gift out of it. So that's what I started with. And I wrote and wrote and wrote, and I wrote way more than what they would accept for the contest. So I had to cut out chapters, and I had to cut out, different things. And it ended up being a successful story, and the book was a success. I was one of 3 winners in the contest, and I was shocked, absolutely shocked. Then I thought, well, it pulled me up. Writing this book pulled me up out of, my bad place. I was unhappy, and I went from unhappy to happy. I reconnected with people over the phone that I hadn't talked to in years, friends to refresh my memory on things, to laugh about some of this stuff that happened. And wow, it was amazing. And so I thought, I'd really like to go further with this. This seems, really special. It is really special to me. It was very special. So I started looking for a publisher, and found that getting published is extremely hard. It is really, publishers ask people to write for them. They don't really, submitting a manuscript is, they don't usually accept them or read them. And then I ran into Fox Point, and wow, they read my thing. They said, "This looks great. Let's go for it." And so that's what we did. And here I am, and I've got a book. I worked with a professional editor, which was amazing. There are people that can do things so fast. It is so impressive. Really, amazing people in the book world that I got to get connected with, and that's where it came from, and that's how we ended up with this book. A very special opportunity for me, and I can't be more happy and more thankful to all the people that I interacted with and have helped me get to this point.
I think, and I was going to ask you about your awards and that contest that you mentioned. So if you could expand a little bit on the awards and other awards, the highlighted ones that you think were the highlights in your life, because there were quite a few listed, and also explain the title "Shaped by Water."
Sure.
You talked a little bit about that, but expand on that more.
Well, I'll start with the title and then I'll talk about some of the awards. So, Shaped by Water is really a truth statement about my life. When I look back, I can see that water has been such a huge part of my life and has changed me as I've interacted with it. When I was a child, I grew up in Southeast Rochester, or what is now Southeast Rochester, about 1 mile from Bear Creek. And I would walk from my house often by myself, but also very often with my brother. And we would go and play in Bear Creek, especially in the summertime, but really all times of the year. We walked back and forth so many times that we wore a dirt path from our house to the creek, which is incredible if you think about it. I went through a farmer's alfalfa field, I walked through a forest, and then there we were. And the experience of that gave me so much in my life. I always experienced a sense of serenity and peace when I was at the creek. At no point did I ever have a traumatic experience or a fearful experience even. I would go there often alone and think. I would walk the creek. I would walk up the creek. I would walk down the creek. It was only ankle deep most of the places. And it was clean yellow sand. And I was just, the creek babbled when it went over stones, and, children have tough feet. So I never felt, the rocks and stuff that might hurt me now never bothered me. And I would go for miles, and sometimes I would skip lunch. Other times I would bring lunch with me. My parents never questioned me about, or tell me, I couldn't do it. They would just ask me, what time will you be back? And I was granted that freedom. And it ended up being something where I have gone back to. I can remember some traumatic experiences in my life where I would unconsciously seek out water. One of them, I was in the military, and I ended up on this wild ride with some people I thought were my friends, who ended up taking me, really it was almost an abduction scenario where this girl, was running away from home. I wasn't aware of it. And when I found out, I was really mad. And I ended up walking on the coast for, the whole night, really. And I spent the night in a hollow log. It was a way for me to cool down, clear my head, think about what, was the appropriate response to this situation. When I got out of the military, there's a lot of structure in the service, and it was really good for me. I always knew what to do and who to talk to and what the next steps were. And I didn't realize, other people maybe did, but I didn't realize that there was there was so much freedom outside the service. This country has opportunities, and you can't, sometimes you don't know where to go or what to do. I kind of liken it to swimming through Jello. You never understand where you are or what, when there's thousands of opportunities, which one do you choose? Well, at that time, I didn't realize that the real thing that a person has to do is make the choice. Once you make the choice, then you're off to the races. But until you make that choice, you're kind of stuck with indecision, and you don't know where you are or who you are or what you're doing. It's in that making of that choice. And when I would struggle with these things, I would end up walking along water. I would end up going to a path or a stream, or even make my own. So I have a higher power, I believe in God, and I believe that, as we struggle, there are forces that protect us. And I knew that I needed to recenter. I knew that I needed to think through these really challenging experiences that I was going through and find out what to do. And I was kept safe in all of these scenarios. I never felt afraid. I never felt in danger, yet I was aware of the danger that I was in. When I was in Sri Lanka, I was staying with one of the richest people in the country, and the food, that they served us was incredible. And there was so much of it, and it was all going to waste. And I knew when we came in, I'd seen all of these poor people. And so after everybody went to bed, I went down to the kitchen and I asked the servants to give me the leftovers. And I took all of these leftovers out to the slum. They could have killed me, but they didn't. They accepted the food, and I walked around, and it was a very positive experience for me. And it was real. I mean, people invited me into their home to just see how they lived. And I saw this poverty that was just like nothing that I could have experienced, but I could see it. And my heart went out to these people. And then to process that, I would go and walk along the coast. I would go to a pier. Water means a lot to me. I spend the days that I'm home with my son on the water, fishing, swimming. We do these fishing adventures where we go into a trout stream and we don't wear waders. We walk through the stream and fish. And we have this system, he casts, I cast, he casts, I cast. If somebody has a fish on, the other person helps, net it. If somebody gets tangled, the other person helps get it on. Well, I do most of the untangling because he can't reach them, and I don't hit as many trees. But there's this joy, this peace, and most of it is done without talking. The things we say sometimes are just like, "Hey, that's a great fish." Oh, cast over there. No deep conversation, just being together. We are.
Your book is being released. It's the month of June right now as we're talking. It's being released sometime this month. Is that right?
I think it's been released already. I think it was released on the 17th. And you can pre-order it through Fox Point right now. I won't have any copies to sell personally until the end of the month, when I'll start visiting libraries and other places to sell, in person and do book signings. But yeah, it's out now, or it's available, for pre-order at this time. And you asked me about some awards. I think that one of the most special awards for me was I got an accommodation medal in the service for co-founding an organization called Airmen Against Drunk Driving. And we saw, my friends and I saw, and some of my friends even saw people doing a lot of drinking and then getting in accidents or fights. And in the service, if you abuse alcohol and then something happens, there's more than the consequences of the altercation. The Uniform Code of Military Justice holds service members to a higher standard. And at the time, we were told, call the base commander and he'll come and get you from the bar. Well, nobody's going to do that. Nobody, is going to wake up the base commander and ask him to come and get you. So we came up with this idea, and what it was is we raised some money from the Officer Wives Club, and we got a location, and we got some sponsors, and people would call us, and on Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, we would pick them up, and they would be of equal rank to us. And we got permission from the base police to let us drive in and out and bring people back. Obviously there's the security concerns. None of those are bypassed, but the, hey, you guys are drunk part was, okay, you're taking them home, you're with this organization, we know, they know, off you go. And, we were allowed to go through and bring people home where they slept it off and could, decide whether or not they were going to do that again. And there was a lot of pressure not to, social pressure. We kept signs on the entrances of the bases where we logged how many signs people had or how many saves we had on the signs for people that we had picked up and brought back. And I don't remember the exact numbers because they changed every week, and then we would reset it at the month, but it was quite a few. And it ended up going Department of Defense wide after I left. It's a very big organization, and they do a lot of good. So that accommodation medal means a great deal for me. The other award that probably means the most to me is a little more recent. I got an Environmental Achievement Award for working with Quarry Hill Nature Center in Rochester. I got into beekeeping, and I helped them design and put in a special beehive for education purposes. And the award was for that. But honestly, I had been volunteering at Quarry Hill for a very long time. As a child, about the age of 12, I started riding my bicycle there, which was in excess of 10 miles from my house. I would race my parents to work. As every kid knows, you can beat that car. But I would, I'd get a head start, and my parents would drive into work, and I would ride as fast as I possibly could to Quarry Hill Nature Center, where they were my unofficial babysitters. I went out there, I took care of the animals inside the nature center. I worked with the college students who were teaching classes, and very often I would be in the pond up to my nose in water, catching turtles, and I would bring them in, and I worked with Greg Munson to weigh the turtles and measure the turtles, and then we put a blue dot on them of paint to know which ones I'd caught and which ones I hadn't. And eventually that turned into a very scientific study for them after I had joined the service or whatever, where they started documenting this in a log book and started using an etching system where they would etch marks in the turtle shell, which it doesn't hurt the turtle. But they did a lot of documentation there. Well, afterwards, after I got married, and to my beautiful wife, Joanna, whom I love very much, and I thank for supporting me and encouraging me to do this project, we had a child. His name is Theodore, and we started taking him to Quarry Hill, and I was volunteering there regularly as an official animal caretaker, where I took care of the animals once a week, fed everything, sometimes cleaned cages, and there's stories in the book here. There's a story where I take Theodore out fishing because he loves fishing. I don't know why, but he loves fishing as much as I do, maybe more. And we would fish, and we were followed by a very large snapping turtle that would destroy our, first he started pulling stuff off the stringer. So then we got a fish basket, and then he would tear the fish basket apart to get the fish. So I thought, well, he's not afraid of us. He's ruining our stuff. If I see him, I'll just give him the fish. And so I taught Theodore in that, this moral lesson where, he's the apex predator of the pond. This is his home. We only visit for a short while. And so it's okay, to give this animal fish. And I did something that most people probably would never do, and I don't recommend, but I would hand feed the snapper. I would take the fish that we caught, usually bluegill, and I would see him coming, and I would take a bluegill and I would hold it out to him, and he would come and eat it. And after he ate 5 or 7 fish, then he would swim away and be gone. and and then we could continue fishing. The limit on bluegill is 20, and so we had plenty to spare, plenty to share. 20 per person, so that's 40 fish for 2 people fishing. That's more than you need. So we were very happy to share with the turtle, and that's how we live our life. We try to work with the situations that we encounter and adapt to them in a way that is what I would call a win-win situation.
Andrew, you are fantastic. Thanks for being on the show today, Andrew.
Well, thank you for having me. It was my